The journey back to myself, healing after a broken heart. The end of a love often leaves deep scars. Not only the heart seems to be broken, but also the idea of who you were, who you are, and who you wanted to be. The pain of a broken heart feels like a part of one's soul has been lost forever. The world, once colorful and full of possibilities, becomes gray, dull, and empty. But as overwhelming as the pain may be, it also carries a message. The journey back to yourself begins right here, at this point of decay. The end of a relationship is not the end of your story. Rather, it is the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter in which you will discover yourself in ways that may have seemed impossible before. Each of us has experienced that moment when everything falls apart. It's the moment when we ask ourselves whether things will ever get better again. But this break is not the end. It is the first step on the path to a deeper, more authentic relationship with ourselves. This text accompanies you on the journey that is born from rubble and shows you how to not only overcome the pain, but grow stronger from it and emerge with a deep sense of self-love and self-acceptance. Because the goal is not to restore the old state, but to find a new, stronger self. The beginning of the end, the illusion of perfection in relationships. At the beginning of a relationship, many people believe they have found perfect happiness. The world seems bathed in warm light, and everything feels light and carefree. You laugh together, share secrets, build dreams, and imagine a future together. During this time, love is idealized as if it were a solution to all problems, as if your partner was the missing half of your life. The small flaws and peculiarities that later become big problems are initially ignored or dismissed as unimportant. The illusion arises that this love could last forever, that we complete each other. This idea is deeply romantic, but it carries a danger. You begin to define yourself by the relationship. The boundaries between the self and the relationship become blurred, and the idea of getting along without the other person suddenly seems unbearable. But every illusion has its limits. Relationships that are based on perfection and the need for validation inevitably falter. You overlook warning signs, suppress feelings, or convince yourself that everything is fine, until it can no longer be denied. First cracks and the sudden collapse. The first cracks in a relationship often seem inconspicuous. Maybe it's a harmless remark, a forgotten appointment, or a thoughtless action that hurts deeper than it should. At the beginning, this is overlooked because love, it is believed, can overcome everything. But over time, more cracks appear, trust begins to crumble, and the once vibrant connection loses its strength. What once started as a small disagreement develops into tensions that can no longer be ignored. Suddenly, questions arise that you could never have imagined. Why are we so far apart? What happened to us? Or even, am I still happy? The breakdown of a relationship often doesn't happen suddenly, even if it feels like it. Rather, it is a process that develops over weeks, months, or even years. You fight against decay, try to stop the inevitable, but in the end, you are left with the shards of what once seemed so safe and stable. The realization that something no longer works often hits with full force. It's like waking up from a dream and realizing you've been ignoring the warning signs all along. And then comes the moment when it becomes clear. There is no going back. The point at which the end is inevitable. What remains when love leaves? When a relationship ends, it leaves a painful void behind. Everything you've built together, memories, plans, hopes, suddenly seems worthless. It feels like a part of your life has been erased, like the person closest to you has taken a part of you with them. The conversations, the laughter, the shared moments, they all dissolve into nothingness, leaving only questions. Who am I now without this relationship? What is left of me? What remains is often the pain, the feeling of failure, and the longing for the good times that now seem lost forever. You feel uprooted, disoriented, and empty. Your own identity, which has been intertwined with the relationship for so long, must be rediscovered. Because what remains when love leaves is not only the loss of your partner, but also the loss of a part of yourself. In this phase of shock and confusion, the process of self-discovery begins, even if it doesn't feel like it at first. Because amid the rubble of the failed relationship lies the opportunity to rediscover yourself. But before this can happen, the pain must be accepted and lived through. The pain, when nothing makes sense anymore. the emotional chaos after the break, the moment when the relationship is finally over, often feels as if the ground has been ripped out from under you. Nothing seems to make sense anymore. You fluctuate between anger, sadness, despair, and sometimes a strange numbness. It's a chaotic whirlpool of emotions that leaves you feeling trapped without knowing how to escape. Some days you feel paralyzed, other days flooded with intense emotions. It's an ebb and flow. You're angry at the other person, angry at yourself, sad about what you've lost, and at the same time full of guilt because you think you could have done more to prevent the end. But all of these emotions are part of a healing process that is more complex than anyone could have imagined. Any attempt to escape the pain only leads to more confusion and a feeling of being trapped in an endless cycle. Physical and psychological effects of a broken heart. What many people don't know is that a broken heart not only has emotional, but also physical effects. There is actually something called broken heart syndrome, where the stress of emotional trauma can cause heart problems. The body responds to the emotional pain as if it had been physically injured. The heartbeat changes, sleep suffers, the immune system is weakened. The body cries out for rest and healing, but often it feels like you can't find relief. The psychological effects are just as serious. The loss can lead to a deep sense of hopelessness, sometimes even depressive episodes. There are days when you wonder if you will ever be able to feel joy again. Thoughts endlessly revolve around the same questions. What went wrong? Could I have done something differently? And will I ever be happy again? The combination of emotional and physical exhaustion often leads to a state of exhaustion. That moment when you feel like you just can't do it anymore is a natural reaction to grief and loss. But it is important to understand that this situation will not last forever. The time after the separation, between emptiness and despair. After a breakup, time is often an enemy. The hours drag by, the days drag on endlessly. What was previously filled with shared experiences and conversations is now empty. This emptiness is often the hardest thing to endure, because it makes you feel how much space the relationship has taken up, and how much you have distanced yourself from yourself during this time. The days after the separation are often characterized by deep despair. You wake up in the morning and immediately feel the emptiness that surrounds you. The bed suddenly feels far too big. The everyday things that were once taken for granted, a cup of coffee in the morning, getting up for work, become painful reminders of what was. You remember the routines you shared and the little moments you shared. Now that they are missing, it feels like the world has lost its meaning. Despair is a constant companion in this phase. You are desperately looking for answers, for explanations. Why did it happen like this? What could have been done to prevent the end? These thought spirals can drive you crazy. But as distressing as this time is, it is an inevitable part of the healing process. Despair is the sign that the heart is beginning to process the loss. Even if it seems paradoxical, it is precisely the deep moments of despair that prepare the ground for later healing. The role of grief and letting go. The pain of a broken heart is in many ways similar to what people feel after losing a loved one. It is the loss of a future, a shared history, a dream. And as with any type of loss, grief is a natural, inevitable part of the process. Grieving means allowing the pain instead of repressing it or distracting yourself. It means creating the space in which the pain is allowed to exist without immediately looking for a solution. It is often difficult to accept that the only way to truly let go is through grief. Many people try to avoid the pain, whether through distractions, new relationships, or excessive work. But all these attempts to avoid the pain ultimately only prolong the healing process. Letting go does not mean denying the memories or the meaning of the relationship. Rather, it means accepting that this phase of your life is over and that it is time to put yourself first again. It is a slow, painful process, but one that inevitably leads to healing. Search in the darkness. Pain as a teacher. What does this loss tell me? It's a bitter truth, but one that must be accepted. Pain can be a teacher. When a heart breaks, your inner compass is disrupted, and you suddenly find yourself at a point where everything is questioned. Pain itself carries a message, a deep wisdom, but it only reveals itself when you are willing to listen to it. It's easy to see yourself in this moment as a victim of circumstance, as someone to whom something bad has happened. But what if this pain wants to tell you something, when he shows you the way back to yourself? Losing a relationship forces you to come to terms with yourself. What does this break mean for you personally? What patterns emerged in the relationship? What fears, insecurities, or unresolved conflicts within you have come to the surface as a result of the relationship? Often relationships reflect back to us the deepest parts of ourselves, both the beautiful and the painful. Pain invites you to face these unresolved parts. Maybe it's the fear of loneliness that made you stay in the relationship even though it was no longer good for you. Or maybe you lost yourself in the relationship because you were always trying to make the other person happy while ignoring your own needs. By viewing pain as a teacher, you open the space to learn from the loss and understand yourself on a deeper level. It's a bitter truth, but one that must be accepted. Pain can be a teacher. When a heart breaks, your inner compass is disrupted, and you suddenly find yourself at a point where everything is questioned. Pain itself carries a message, a deep wisdom, but it only reveals itself when you are willing to listen to it. It's easy to see yourself in this moment as a victim of circumstance, as someone to whom something bad has happened. But what if this pain wants to tell you something, when he shows you the way back to yourself? Losing a relationship forces you to come to terms with yourself. What does this break mean for you personally? What patterns emerged in the relationship? What fears, insecurities, or unresolved conflicts within you have come to the surface as a result of the relationship? Often relationships reflect back to us the deepest parts of ourselves, both the beautiful and the painful. Pain invites you to face these unresolved parts. Maybe it's the fear of loneliness that made you stay in the relationship even though it was no longer good for you. Or maybe you lost yourself in the relationship because you were always trying to make the other person happy while ignoring your own needs. By viewing pain as a teacher, you open the space to learn from the loss and understand yourself on a deeper level. Facing the pain instead of running away from it. The natural reaction to pain is often flight. Nobody wants to suffer voluntarily. People try to avoid the pain through distraction, anesthesia, or repression. But these attempts are only ever successful in the short term. At some point, the pain catches up with you, be it through sleepless nights, sudden emotions, or the feeling of inner emptiness. The only way to truly overcome pain is to face it. This means allowing the sadness, feeling the heartache and disappointment, and making space for these emotions to exist. This sounds frightening, but in reality it is liberating. By giving space to the pain, you allow yourself to heal the wounds instead of covering them up. Taking a stand requires courage. It means not running away and not lying to yourself. It means accepting the truth of the situation, even if it hurts. But there is incredible power in this act of acceptance. It's the moment you take back control of your healing instead of letting the pain take control of you. How loneliness paves the way to self-discovery. Loneliness is one of the most overwhelming feelings that can arise after a relationship ends. Suddenly, the person who was always there is no longer by your side, and you are faced with the challenge of moving forward alone. But loneliness is not just a state of lack. It can also be an opportunity. It offers the space to rediscover yourself. When you've been in a relationship for a long time, you often tend to adapt to the other person, sometimes even at the expense of your own identity. Your own person is put in the background in order to meet the needs of the partnership. Now, in solitude, you have the opportunity to ask yourself, who am I without this relationship? What dreams, passions, and interests do I have that may have been neglected? Loneliness forces you to be thrown back on yourself. In this silence, where you are alone with yourself, the process of self-discovery begins. It's a slow process, but one that can connect you deeply with yourself. Silence gradually becomes a place where you discover your inner strength, the strength that exists even without a relationship. Emotional waves, between acceptance and relapse. The path to healing is never linear. There are days when you think you've gotten over the pain, only to be overwhelmed by a wave of grief the next day. This is normal. Healing comes in phases, and sometimes you feel like you're going backwards. These emotional waves are part of it. There are moments of acceptance when you understand and accept the end of the relationship. You feel the heaviness lift and you begin to feel little sparks of peace. But there are also days when the pain comes back as if it never left. You remember old times, each other's smiles, the closeness, and all the emotions come back. These relapses are not a sign of failure. You are part of the process. Every emotional regression provides an opportunity to understand more deeply what is not yet healed within you. With every wave that comes, you learn more about yourself and what you need to finally let go. The trick is not to fight these waves, but to accept them. They are part of the transition that slowly but surely leads you to a stronger and more holistic self. The path to healing, step by step. The decision to heal yourself. The most important step on the path to healing is the conscious decision to actually take this path. After a breakup, it can be tempting to remain in the victim role, feeding on the pain and staying stuck in the past. But to truly heal, you must choose to look forward and take responsibility for your own healing. This decision is not easy. It takes courage and willpower because it means you no longer ignore or numb the pain. It means that you actively search for yourself, even if you don't know exactly what to expect. Healing is not a linear journey, but a path that leads through ups and downs. But this path begins with the clear decision. I want to heal. I want to find myself again. Self-care, rediscovering your own worth. In a relationship, you often neglect your own self-care because you're so busy being there for the other person. After a breakup, there is an opportunity to rediscover your own worth. Self-care is more than just superficial pampering with a hot bath or a spa day. It is the deep belief that you are worthy of being treated well by yourself. Self-care starts with listening to your needs and giving them space. Ask yourself, what do I really need right now? Is it calm, time for myself alone, or is it the connection to other people who are important to me? Treat yourself to the things that are good for you, even if they seem unusual at first. Self-care means setting boundaries, taking time for yourself, and giving yourself permission to not be perfect. It's about recognizing yourself as someone worthy of being loved again, not just by others, but also by yourself. That's the key to healing, the realization that you don't base your own value on one relationship or a partner. The power of routines and small steps. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It is a process that requires time and patience. One of the best ways to stabilize yourself on this journey is to take small steps and create routines that support you. Although it may be difficult at first, establishing a daily structure can help you bring order back to the emotional chaos. Routines provide stability during a time that often feels unpredictable and uncertain. Start with small things. Maybe you start the day with a conscious moment of silence or a walk. Eating regularly, exercising, or keeping a journal can also help you get back in touch with yourself. It's not about making huge changes all at once, but rather finding your way back to a balanced self step by step. By setting small goals every day and achieving them, you will slowly regain confidence in yourself. You realize that you are able to lead a meaningful, fulfilling life even without the relationship. The small successes along this path strengthen you and give you the strength to keep going. Forgiving yourself. Letting go of the burden of guilt. After a breakup, it's easy to blame yourself. If I had done this, if only I had been different. These thoughts gnaw at you and increase the feeling of failure. But to truly heal, you must learn to forgive yourself. No person is perfect. There are mistakes in every relationship, and it's important to recognize that you did your best, even if it wasn't enough in the end. The first step to forgiveness is accepting that you can't control everything. Relationships always consist of two people, and not everything was in your control. Forgiving yourself means taking responsibility for your own actions without endlessly punishing yourself for them. It means being compassionate with yourself, just as you would be with a good friend. Ask yourself, how would you help a friend who is in the same situation? Would you approach him with condemnation, or would you offer him compassion and understanding? You deserve exactly this compassion for yourself. Healing old wounds. What pain from the past reveals. Sometimes the pain of a recent breakup brings old wounds to the surface, injuries from past relationships or even from childhood. Often there are unresolved patterns that lead us to similar situations again and again. If we don't deal with these old wounds, we unconsciously repeat the same mistakes in our relationships. This moment of separation offers you the chance to look deeper. What old injuries are still contributing to your current pain? You may realize that losing a partner also activates fears that you have long suppressed, such as the fear of not being enough or the fear of being abandoned. By bringing these old wounds to light, you can begin to consciously heal them. It is a process of introspection that requires courage. But when you face these old wounds, you open the door to a deeper form of healing. You learn to free yourself from the shackles of the past and no longer shape your future based on old fears and patterns. Finding new perspectives. Life after separation. After the breakup, it may be difficult to imagine that life will be worth living again, let alone that it will have beautiful things in store. But there are always moments when you start to see the world from a new perspective. You may discover new interests or passions that you hadn't noticed before, or you get to know people who are good for you in a whole new way. It's not about jumping into a new relationship right away or expecting everything to get better right away. But little by little, with every small step of healing, you will realize that life goes on after the breakup. More than that, it has the potential to enrich you in ways you never thought possible. New perspectives also mean you can see the relationship you lost in a different light. What did you learn from her? What strengths have you developed during this time? And most importantly, who are you now that you are no longer just part of a couple, but completely yourself again? Finding new perspectives. Life after separation. After the breakup, it may be difficult to imagine that life will be worth living again, let alone that it will have beautiful things in store. But there are always moments when you start to see the world from a new perspective. You may discover new interests or passions that you hadn't noticed before, or you get to know people who are good for you in a whole new way. It's not about jumping into a new relationship right away or expecting everything to get better right away. But little by little, with every small step of healing, you will realize that life goes on after the breakup. More than that, it has the potential to enrich you in ways you never thought possible. New perspectives also mean you can see the relationship you lost in a different light. What did you learn from her? What strengths have you developed during this time? And most importantly, who are you now that you are no longer just part of a couple, but completely yourself again? As you process the pain of loss, you gradually reconnected with yourself. You begin to realize who you were outside of the relationship and who you are now. In a long relationship, it can easily happen that you give up parts of your identity to your partner or give it up in the service of the relationship. Now that this part of your life is complete, you have the space to rediscover yourself. You may realize that you have interests that you neglected during the relationship or that you want to develop new passions. You take the time to ask yourself, who am I really? What defines me if I'm not part of a couple? These questions will lead you on the path to rebuilding your own identity independent of other people. You begin to discover activities that bring you joy, whether it's a creative hobby you previously gave up or new challenges that take you out of your comfort zone. This process of rediscovering yourself is powerful and invigorating. He shows you that not only can you survive, but that you can grow and thrive even after your heart has been broken. New goals and dreams. Courage to change. As clarity about your identity grows, the courage to dream again arises. The time after healing is a time of new beginnings, and with it, new goals and dreams come into your life. Maybe you had plans or desires for a long time that you put on hold, either because the relationship had other priorities or because you didn't have the courage to pursue them. Now that you have detached yourself from the past, you feel the inner drive to resume these dreams or develop completely new ones. It takes courage to commit to new goals, especially when you are in a phase of vulnerability. But it is precisely this courage that makes you grow. You have the power to do things that might have intimidated you before. Maybe you want to take a new career path, learn new skills, or realize a lifelong dream you've been putting off for a long time. The new beginning is your chance to consciously shape the direction of your life and take advantage of the opportunities that lie in front of you. The joy of independence. After a period of intensive confrontation with being alone, you now feel that independence is not only a necessity, but also a gift. It is a feeling of freedom that comes with the realization that you are not dependent on someone else for your happiness. This independence is not loneliness, but the joy of finding peace and contentment in your own company. You begin to appreciate the little things, the freedom to make decisions on your own without having to compromise, the ability to plan your day the way you want, and the knowledge that you are strong enough to face difficult times alone to survive. This joy of independence is the foundation for every future relationship you enter into, because it shows you that you are complete even without a partner. It's a liberating feeling knowing that you can live your life on your own terms. There are no longer any dependencies that restrict you or hinder your development. Instead, there is a deep inner certainty that you alone are strong enough to live a fulfilling and happy life. Love for yourself and the possibility of new relationships. With the growing self-love and peace you have found with yourself comes the opportunity to be open to new relationships again, but this time in a completely different, healthier way. You now know that a relationship shouldn't be a way to fill gaps within you. You have experienced that true fulfillment comes from within, and that every relationship you enter into in the future should only be an enrichment to your already fulfilling life. Love for yourself is the most important prerequisite for any future relationship. It reassures you that you are not acting out of need, but rather from a place of abundance. You are not looking for someone to complete you. You are already complete. Instead, you're looking for someone who shares your joy in life without having to give up on yourself. New relationships won't immediately become the focus of your life, and that's a good thing. You learn that your happiness does not depend on another person, but that it is in your own hands. If you decide to enter into a new relationship, it will be built on a foundation of self-love, respect, and mutual appreciation. The completion of the circle. After everything you've been through, the dark hours of pain, the lonely nights, the inner struggles, and the moments of despair, you are now at a point where everything has come full circle. The heartbreak that once raged over you like an endless storm has turned into a gentle breeze. You feel a new form of peace, a kind of inner calm that you may never have imagined when the pain was so overwhelming. The journey to yourself is not easy. It requires courage, patience, and the willingness to accept yourself with all your imperfections. But this path not only leads to healing, but also to a deeper connection to your own core being. You have learned that pain is not the enemy, but a teacher. He led you to the darkest corners of your soul so that you could find your inner light there. Now that the storm has passed, you have become stronger, wiser, and more loving towards yourself. You didn't just get through the heartbreak, you found yourself again. The transformation, from pain to strength. When you look back, you realize that the heartbreak, as unbearable as it once seemed, ultimately gave you new strength. He showed you that you were capable of going through deep pain and still finding the strength to carry on. You have learned that your fragility and vulnerability are not a weakness, but a source of compassion and wisdom. You have gone through a metamorphosis. The person you are now is not the same person you were before the pain. You have grown. You have healed old wounds and freed yourself from the chains of the past. You are now able to shape your life with more clarity and self-confidence. This transformation is the greatest gift you could give yourself. The value of self-love and self-care. One of the most important lessons on your journey was the importance of self-love. You have realized that you must never base your own worth on another person's affection or approval. Your value is independent of whether you are in one. As you close this chapter of your journey, remember that the path to self-discovery and healing is ongoing. Embrace the lessons you've learned and continue to nurture the self-love and strength you've cultivated. Your journey doesn't end here. It evolves with every step you take. Take the time to reflect on how far you've come, celebrate your resilience, and set new goals that align with your authentic self. Allow yourself to dream boldly and pursue what truly matters to you. Embrace change, welcome new opportunities, and trust in your ability to create a fulfilling life. Remember, you are the architect of your own happiness. Let your experiences shape you into someone who not only survives but thrives. Continue to invest in yourself, seek out what brings you joy, and never stop growing. Your story is uniquely yours, and the best chapters are still to come. So step forward with courage, carry the lessons of your past, and forge ahead with the confidence that you have the power to shape your future. Your journey of self-discovery is a testament to your strength, and the world awaits the incredible person you are becoming. Embrace your path, live with intention, and shine brightly as you write the next